a number of people wanting to ask questions, so can I ask candidates if they can
take
try
notice
to
of it.
condense their answers in a shorter period of time and try to confine themselves to what they're being asked. So, brother Ian, and then yourself.
We enter dispute with BA, probably the most disastrous dispute I've ever known. We're a laughing stock. The biggest union in the country is a laughing stock. We have a general secretary who tweets in a meeting with management and nothing's done about it. We have a head of BA saying, Tony, he comes to my office, we have a cup of tea and we have a talk. What are we doing? The head of Unite took the Executive Council, went to my branch and said, we're taking 2% of your GP fund without asking and giving it to a dispute. I'm not against that. I'm not against that at all. Is it a special dispute or is it just an ordinary dispute? In my view, it's an ordinary dispute that we face in Wigan, we face in Leigh, we face in Oldham every day. They didn't come back and ask me, this Democratic Union, do you mind if we use 2% of your GP to give to BA? What's so special about it? And when they do it to help it, it's a disaster. So my question is this. In future, is that a precedent now? When we have a dispute in Wigan, when we have a dispute in Rochdale, when we have a will they take money from all the GPs and support that action and support that strike action? That's the first question, Chair. Second question, I'm a retired member. And I'm a part of the biggest section in this union. Over 300,000 of us were Powell. And yet we're treated by this General Secretary and the Executive of where you're associate. You don't have a say. Why can't we have a retired sector like we used to have in Amicus? Will you return the retired members into a retired member sector if he was elected?
Well, yeah, that's two really ones. I don't think we'll get very, very quick answers to those. Let's hit Jerry first.
I think the General Secretary should have been disciplined by our union, or at least openly condemned by the other Joint General Secretary, Tony Woodley, and many others, when he said 12 days was over the top before Christmas. He said it on live TV on Sunday. I think, of course, we're entitled to our own opinions, but he knew precisely what he was doing. I can't prove it, but in my view, it was part of this election, is why he said it. He's back in Bayliss, and he saw Len McCluskey in Sandown races announcing the ballot result, and I think that was the ugliest part of our infighting in our union. I think this union should have already won in BA, because employers watch everything we do, they listen to everything we say. That's why the tweeter was a disgrace. That's why the 12 days over the top was a disgrace. That's why when we've got 70 members suspended, up to 7 sacked, and we're not up in the stakes, that's a disgrace. I think we should have been instilling a confidence and saying, like it is, this is an attack on the union. And I think we should be extending that dispute. That's my view. Members decide, of course, that's what I've said earlier. I think we should be balloting the baggage handlers and taking BA on. On the 2% cash grab, I guess it worked out at £62.50 per member. I think we should have impressed upon our members, all 1.7 million, the importance. It's not just another dispute. It's a big set-piece dispute. And if 1.7 million members have responded, and then the TUC responded, we would not just have a war chest for them, but the disputes that will follow. So I think BA has been a disaster, and I hope it's a victory. But when you know, our placards say we've offered 2.5%, and all they're doing is victimising our members. You know, I think in these 4 walls, now on YouTube, I think it's heading for disaster. I hope I'm wrong. But when I go home from the picket line, of a legal, legitimate strike, and on the news that night is one of our members in the biggest union in the country, and as it was then under a Labour government, funded to the hilt by us, it was in a darkened studio with the lights turned down low and an actor's voice to protect them. That's how low this union has sunk. Is everything wrong? Of course not. Am I saying everything's wrong? No, of course not. But I would be a fool if I didn't point out the things that are wrong, that shouldn't be wrong, and for us to correct. On retired members, I think everyone should have full and equal rights in this union. Full and equal rights, including the sector of your own.
it is difficult to give a short answer on the BA dispute, especially when, like me, I was involved for 8 or 9 weeks trying to negotiate a settlement. I reject the idea that this is the most disastrous dispute that we've ever seen, or indeed that the dispute is a disaster. It's nothing of the kind. It's a simple process where 12,000 of our members voted by 92% to take strike action because they were not prepared to allow a company to impose changes without negotiation. And all that happened was that the union came forward to support the membership. And that's precisely where we are today. Now, of course, in any major dispute, when you're taking on an employer who has the backing of the city, not interested in how much money he loses, has a secret agenda to try and crush the union, of course, it's then a question of tactics and what we could or couldn't do. Could we have done more? In my opinion, we could have. And in my opinion, we should have. We should have been better at explaining the situation to our activists and shop stewards. We didn't even send information out to arm you all with the truth as opposed to the right-wing garbage that was being peddled by the press. So yes, we should have done more. Could we have done more to raise more finance? In my opinion, we could have done more to raise more finance. Before Jerry starts saying, well, you all have to accept collective responsibility, he's not recognising how a union runs, because presumably his condemnation of all full-time officials at the top of the union must also extend to the lay member executive, who are also involved in dictating the way that our union moves. The reality is that there's always lots of arguments behind the scenes, lots of discussions taking place about tactically what should or shouldn't be done. And at the end of the day, general secretaries and executives have the final call on this. In terms of the behaviour of people, the tweeting, for example, that is wrong, and I have expressed my views to Derek about that. That was wrong and unprofessional and not the type of way that we should have been conducting our business. As regards the 2% levy, let me just say this to you. You're absolutely right that a mistake was made by not at least asking our branches or telling our branches what we were going to do. The reason it was done was to try and generate what Jerry has mentioned, the confidence of our members, to keep their spirits high, to argue that they weren't going to be starved back to work. But the manner in which it was conducted got a reaction from our branches. Should all disputes be treated that same way? Well, what I'd like to see develop in the union is, instead of us having X amount of millions of pounds of liquid cash, because that's part of our financial strategy, I'd like us to develop a strike fund, a huge strike fund, that builds and builds and builds, so that when employers are going to take us on, whether it be in Leigh or Wigan or whether it be down in British Airways, they understand that this union means business in terms of wanting to defend our members. And that's really where we are moving to. Now, when you get into a dispute, and if there's a victory, then, you know, everybody wants to be the parents of that victory. When there's a defeat, of course, you know, it's more difficult to find people to take responsibility. I don't suggest for 1 minute that we've done everything right in the British Airways dispute. I know we haven't. I know we could do things better. I know that we've got to learn by our mistakes. I know that we've got to be sharper and cleverer. That's why I spoke before about branches playing a role in the community, trades councils being stimulated again, so that we can call upon other people to assist us, because, as Jerry rightly points out, 13 years of a Labour government and we're still hamstrung as working people, the worst in Europe. Disgraceful position to be in. And the reality is we've got to change that. We've got to tackle the realities of the challenges that are before us. British Airways dispute is still alive and kicking. As far as I'm concerned, the stewards met this week and decided that they will ballot for further industrial action, and I'm supporting that, and I'll continue to support them, irrespective of whether the right-wing press want to attack me personally, irrespective of whether other members of our union want to attack. Because here's the truth of the matter, and we best get used to it as we get ready for the autumn and the winter of discontent in public sector workers. When manufacturing workers, when private sector workers take strike action, the dispute is between them and the employer. When service workers of any kind take industrial action, then innocent members of the public suffer, and the media set about trying to cut us to ribbons. That's what happened with British Airways. That's what will happen when council workers start taking action and your bins aren't getting emptied and the streets aren't getting cleaned or hospital wards are closing down. The innocent members of the public get affected. But we've got to be strong enough and capable enough to battle for what our members want. Our members in British Airways wanted to have a go. We were there, and I was proud to stand alongside them. Last quick point, because this will only take 2 seconds. Retired Members Association. We do have a Retired Members Association, so there is a section now for our retired members. They should be playing a real important role within our union. There are massive a pool of experience that we don't use. My personal view right away is that our retired members should be able to be elected onto the political committees, the activist committees, Peter, you were talking about, the regional councils. That's what our retired members should be able to be elected onto to play their role. But I want to, if I become General Secretary, I've already told the leaders of the retired members of associations, the chairman and the vice chair of that organisation are both supporting my candidature. I've told them that I'll be sitting down with them to work out a proper structure and strategy so that our retired members can play a full and valued role within Unite.
Right, well I can give a short answer on the BA question, and that is I can't speak on behalf of somebody else who's on our AGSs, so forgive me if I don't comment. What I will comment on is, as I'm supporting Gail as a grassroots member, I'm an ex-branch secretary. I was branch secretary of South Manchester Health Service until a couple of years ago. And we were very upset at the change in the rule over branch funds, where anything over a certain sum gets hived off anyway. And that really made us annoyed, because we used our branch funds very wisely, very carefully in supporting reps in a large number of hospitals. Our branch covered 12 different hospitals, and we had a lot of reps to support. So we would buy, appropriate literatures to support them. I've never mentioned this to Gail, but I imagine she would have a similar feeling to my own, because she knows how wide-ranging the health service is. I was a branch secretary, I was very upset about that. The 2% levy, I know our current branch treasurer was, I won't be rude, very upset as well, and very annoyed. It should have been a request, can you donate, not you are going to donate. And that is the thing I know I feel is wrong, and I know Gail does support me in this, that this top-down direction is not right. And as somebody who's been involved with equalities for a lot of years, most of my years in the union, I have noticed that within the union. I don't agree with Jerry. I don't think everything's wrong, but I do think some things need correcting. And that's why I throw the thing back to us all of us, at the next rules conference. We've got to look at that rule book. It's tedious, it's boring, it's mind-bending sometimes. We've got to look at it, change it, as lay members. But on the issue of retired members, I believe we do have a retired section which one can be involved in. It may be limited, and that does need changing. Gail comes from the Equality Set Network very strongly. She's got a very strong equality sense, and she does believe in all strands of the union having a part to play. You mentioned BAM and LGBT. If you were at the rules conference recently, a LGBT seat on the NEC was rejected. And that is wrong. If you're going to have a woman's seat and a black seat, you've got to have a disabled and an LGBT seat. The election is difficult. For an LGBT seat, how do you prove your candidature? That could be difficult. But no, I know Gail's commitment to those sorts of issues is very, very powerful. And that's why I will say I'm supporting your candidacy for that reason.